This is Jan Hammer, and you're watching the Backbeat Experience.
All music is the same. It's just a new set of lyrics and a new backbeat.
Well, Jan, thanks for taking time to have a chat today.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Okay. And we're going to talk about your career as well as the new album.
Sounds good.
Looking up at your background, your mother was a singer, your father was a doctor, but also played vibraphone and bass. So essentially,
yes.
Music was your destiny.
Yeah, it was unavoidable. I was, even though, most of our other relatives were doctors, and my father, of course, was a doctor, and I was sort of more planning through the high school years to be a doctor too, but the music just, got hold of me, and it just wouldn't let go.
Uh-huh. So you started piano at 4, and you got instruction at 6, and then it just went from there.
Yeah, I was, taking classical lessons, and but I heard all the jazz, and I was picking up things just from listening, and it just became a natural thing, to use whatever technique I developed from classical study to use it in jazz. Mm-hmm. And it's something that brought me to America, and it got me going here, even though over the many years I've done just about everything else in addition to jazz. So, but what happened was, just speaking about the new album, after all these years, I felt sort of I missed all the jazz that what it does to your soul, and I had all these ideas that over the years they sort of piled up. So I said I have to put this out. So people have to hear this.
First of all, Jan, I'd like to wish you a belated happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I'm not into celebrating it, but I still thank you.
Okay. Well, that's okay. Not everybody likes to celebrate birthdays, but that's fine.
Well, the numbers do add up.
Unfortunately, yes. But the main thing is we're still here.
Yes, and healthy.
That's right. That's right. So you started out with jazz and classical music, and then you moved on to rock, pop, prog. I mean, you're playing drums, you're playing piano, guitar. So did you start out as a purist, and later always kind of looking for new ways to create sounds?
Well, yes. Basically, there was no options when I was a teenager. The piano was it. That was my instrument. Even though I played some drums too, but the piano was how I broke through. And I pretty much expected to be a jazz pianist for life. Basically, that would be my profession. And I didn't realize that all this electronic stuff would show up and pull me in and. Pretty much changed my direction a lot, and especially with synthesizers, I really discovered my real, true, original voice. I was able to cut through, and even in like a rock environment, like with Mahavishnu Orchestra, which was pretty much a rock band that then improvised, and I was able to eventually with the synthesizer, I was able to break through and be on equal footing with all the lead voices like. Guitar and violin. So that's how that happened.
In '68, you went to Munich. I mean, a lot of people back then would probably go to Berlin. There'd be a lot more happening there.
Well, what was happening was I got an offer for a steady gig at this famous jazz club in Munich called Domicile.
Okay.
And basically, there was like an engagement for the whole summer.
Oh, cool.
And we would play every night, and if there were some guests, musicians from America, traveling by and coming in to play in the club, we would be the backup band. Mm-hmm. So that was like a really wonderful gig for. And I did go to Berlin a couple of times to do some studio work, but I had this steady thing happening in Munich, and then obviously what happened in August. 1968, our Russian friends decided to invade our country, and that was it. I basically the doors closed, and I was basically just moved. I had to stay outside, and I thought I will never return. It was a horrible feeling.
Mm-hmm. You took the opportunity to record an album then, which eventually came out under the title Malma Malini.
That was a misspell. That's an amazing mistake.
Really?
I guess when we were working on the album, my handwriting was, probably very funny, and also there were Czech words that somebody in Munich, some German person, transcribed, and I guess I wrote. It's supposed to say Malini, Malini two times.
Malini, Malini. Okay.
It's a folk song, and the words mean raspberries, like wild raspberries.
Cool.
And somebody just messed up, or I don't think that my handwriting was that bad, but that's how it ended up being mislabeled. But it's been corrected, in the subsequent re-release and remastered versions. So it's now called Malini Malini.
Okay. Eventually, you got a scholarship to go to Berkeley in Boston.
There was, the scholarship was available to me, and at the end of the summer, when my engagement in domicile ended, my family also managed to get out during the invasion, but they made their way to Vienna and then made their way to Munich to stay with me, and then we all went to the United States.
Cool.
And I decided that after studying at Berkeley, that I would definitely stay here because I was able to get many contacts, and I got noticed, and I was able to make a living with music.
So that was your stepping stone in the States. I assume you completed your studies there.
Actually, I didn't. I spent 2 full years in Berkeley, but sort of through an act of God, we could call it. I got hired to go on the road and play with Sarah Vaughan, the legendary singer.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that was the obvious next step, which it was a very big step up in a music career. But that's how I actually ended up leaving Boston, and I never looked back.
Okay, but this is the thing. I thought that you completed your studies. I was going to say that many students do not, and you can sympathize with that. I suppose you can, because that's exactly what you did.
Well, what happens if you sort of stand out? The whole purpose of music studies and music involvement is, to be able to make a living. You don't just want to be a graduate and then show your diploma around. You much rather. If you get noticed, you much rather show off your skills and your talent and be a professional traveling musician.
So you went on to collaborate with Sarah Vaughan and play for her, as well as Jeff Beck, Neil Sean, Santana, Van Halen, Al Di Meola. The list goes on. And if I think particularly the Tony Williams group, when you played the Spectrum in Montreal, which at this point no longer exists, they tore it down. And the Mahavishnu Orchestra. Now, composing solo or with a band, how does that process differ?
You mean doing my solo projects and a band project? But basically, the last time there was a real true band was probably Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Okay.
And then I put together my group where I was much more in control of what the group did. And a lot of the things that I did in studio over the years to this day, I basically do all by myself, and I don't know why I do it that way. I have the studio available. It's at my home, and so it's just something that I do naturally, and it really worked out well for me. So I don't think I'm going to stop.
Well, it's a luxury that not everyone has, but it's nice to have.
Absolutely, it's if you have to decide to do a record and you have to book a studio and you look at the clock and how many hours you spend and days, and it just gets crazy. Here, the studio is here and it's fantastic, and I can take my time and let the inspiration flow whenever it happens. So that's definitely works out well.
In the case of Jeff Beck, you seem to have a special relationship with him. I mean, when you guys play music, you complement each other.
Totally, yeah. There was we met many years ago in 1973 in Switzerland. We were on tour, and we met in Zurich on the same day. We were playing in staying in the same hotel, and I realized that we talked to each other, and he really appreciated what I did musically, and obviously I knew who he was, so I knew all about him, and we talked about music, and we discovered that we really like to do something that's very similar, very soulful, rhythmical, and somewhat jazz influenced in his case very much. He was trying to do more jazzy things, and I was coming from the other side, and I was trying to get involved more in rock sounding things, and the combination really worked well. That just clicked instantly. So when we over the years and decades, we definitely collaborated on some great things.
You guys met in the middle, so to say.
Exactly. There was just a perfect trajectory, and where we met in the middle, right?
Your music is overall instrumental. What about lyrics?
Well, it may be mostly known for instrumental, but I also did write a lot of songs over the years, and especially with my group, there were songs that were very much in a sort of R&B kind of pop soul, whatever you want to call it, and some of them really got noticed. I mean, especially there's one song from the 70s that we did. It's called "Don't You Know," and it's been basically coming in and out and played on the radio, and it's still in a high. It's like even today it's streaming on like Spotify and places like that. I did a whole lot of songs, but that's true that I'm more known for instrumentals. Yeah.
So your mother was a singer. Do you sing?
I sing, but not professionally.
Okay. In the shower.
and the background vocals, like working with my group, or when we did stuff with Neil Sean, I would sing backing vocals, but I'm not a in any way a lead character vocal.
You concentrate on what you do well.
That's not my bag. Yeah.
Well, you've been at the advent of portable keyboards, and I read somewhere, I think the Probe, was that a keyboard?
Yes, that was the original design. It was originated. That specific design was originally built for Roger Powell, who played with Todd Rundgren, and then I met with the engineer who built it for him. I said, I want this thing, except I want a different design for my left hand, because I use a different controller. So he designed it from scratch, a new sort of space age like keyboard, and that really made a big difference to me. That I could actually get up and then play in a true rock attitude, playing music and being able to aim the music in the audience as opposed to just being behind the piano. So that was a big step forward. Was that the bookend to the Keytar? Well, actually, that was it. Eventually, I would say it devolved into the Keytar. Okay. And it actually became like later in the 80s and 90s, it became almost like a joke. Okay. Because a lot of people tried to do it and they didn't know. It was very awkward for them to play. They looked awkward, and they didn't play anything worthwhile. So that's where the Keytar became almost a joke. But it's still a very valid idea. So when I think of keyboardists, I think of Jean-Michel Jarre, Vangelis, Giorgio Moroder, James Newton Howard, who's done a lot of soundtrack work, Keith Emerson, Rick Wakeman. I mean, the list goes on. So what do you think it is that sets you apart from them? Wow, what a question! I think it's much more the background that I have in jazz. If you think about all the people that you mentioned, there was none of them were in any way jazz influence, and I think it's the improvisation part of my output. When I make music, there's always a large part of that is improvised. And I think that is definitely that puts me, apart from the people you mentioned. Okay, spur of the moment. When you guys did live concerts, was there a lot of improvisation? When you buy, concert over the years, there's always, there are written compositions, and then you first maybe like play the composition, and then individuals take solos, and that's the system that I grew up with, and that still makes sense, and all the solos obviously are improvised on the spot. Okay. In '92, what inspired you to get involved with Beyond the Mind's Eye? Again, I was interested in everything in music, electronics, and obviously computers were very much big part of it. And computer graphics were becoming so fascinating. It was the first time where the computer graphics became really artistically very interesting. And the company that they made the videos of like contemporary computer graphics projects, they approached me. I guess they heard some of my electropop music. Obviously, this was all after the big success with Miami Vice.
Correct.
With with the electropop stuff that I've been doing. So it really connected really well with what they were putting together as far as the computer graphics project. And that's how we just got together and worked on it. It was just a great job and great fun to do.
Because a lot of people purchased that. I mean, it was a big seller.
Oh yeah, I wasn't surprised at all. It was just fascinating to look at, and hopefully fascinating to listen to. Both the video and the CD, of the music of the soundtrack, both were very successful.
Yeah, I checked out your website and I had a look at it. Very interesting stuff. I'd only seen like snippets of it somewhere in the past 30 years. The movie Thief with James Caan was directed by Michael Mann, and it featured the music of Tangerine Dream. Now, Michael Mann then later envisioned Miami Vice as an MTV cop show. You composed the theme for Miami Vice before he ever even approached you. Did the soundtrack to Thief give you an idea of what he might be looking for Miami Vice?
I never saw the movie.
No, you didn't. Oh, unfortunate.
I mean, I knew of Tangerine Dream. Obviously,
right.
It was a great sounding band, or electronics and all that. I always liked that. Mm-hmm. But what happened was, when I met through a mutual friend, I met with Michael Mann, and he was talking about putting together a show. I don't think he even had a name yet. It was something about Miami. It was, I don't know. I'm not sure if that even was. It was not even in production yet. It was just casting people, and we met in his office, and he said that he would like the music to be like nothing else on television mm-hmm. that day or that year, or because television had a certain expected sound and approach to music scoring.
Yep.
And I had one idea of sketches on a cassette, and I played him one thing, and that actually turned out to be the theme song, the theme tune for the opening for Miami Vice. That really worked out well, even though I ended up then working on 88 episodes. For over 4 years. Was
that a piece of music that just came to you, or how did that come about?
It was just something that I again, it's just experimentation with different rhythms and layers of pulsating, electro music very early on. This was just by layering different sounds on top of each other in different rhythms, and over the time it developed into that I guess we could say groove. Mm-hmm. And that's how it came about. It was nothing. I had no idea what I was doing it for. It was just another piece of music that I worked on from the Clear Blue. So essentially you were experimenting. You could say that. That's what basically that's what we do most of the time. Hope that something clicks. Especially when you have your own studio, you have the opportunity to do that. That's right, exactly. You can start an idea, put it away, do something else, then come back to it a few days later. Mm-hmm. You just couldn't do this if you were. Again, I'm just complaining about paying studio rates. Yeah. Hiring studios. So mm-hmm. I don't have any of that. You didn't have any of that problem. Do you ever get any guests coming to your studio to record stuff together? Well, the most famous guest obviously would be Jeff. He's been here several times. We recorded things for his record. The album Wired. Parts of that album were recorded here. Oh. And then, as far as guests, also other than Jeff, there was my wonderful, long departed friend Michael Brecker, the great saxophonist. Yeah. He played on an album. He came up here, and that's about it. I mean, it was we recorded, our group albums here too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was we actually had the whole band was living in this house for a few years.
Cool.
It was like a whole other part of my life.
I would have.
But again, it was great because we were there and we could be in the studio at any hour of the day or night. So the music really became very organic.
Yeah, especially musicians are known to be night owls.
Yeah, you could say that again.
Yeah.
I'm not that anymore, but I definitely used to be.
Okay. Many albums of Miami Vice music have been released. Is there anything left that has not seen the light of day?
I don't know if there's anything left that is releasable as a standalone piece of music, because
Okay.
there were really just sections of the underscore,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean I could. There could be a way to possibly string some of these things together, but I don't really have any interest in that. I'm
Okay.
Sort of what I'm doing is the new things that I'm doing are obviously rooted in that style of music.
Mm-hmm.
So for like a couple of years ago, then my album Seasons Part 1, a lot of people say that it's sort of in continuation of what I started doing with Miami Vice, except with more new, different new sounds, and so that's basically where I see the continuation. I don't see reviving or digging out any old pieces of music from the show.
I can understand that. Move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Due to the runaway success of the Miami Vice theme song, you shot a video for it. Now, was that and the song Too Much to Lose the only videos you ever produced for music TV?
Oh no.
No?
I made videos with Neil Sean from both albums. We had videos.
Okay.
I did the song Crockett's Theme.
Oh yeah.
That has its own video too. Yeah, there were always, every few years or so there were some videos, and the one for Too Much to Lose, even though that has nothing to do with Miami Vice, there was just a great, it started as a goof. We were talking, why don't we get some people to just stand in and, because on the record I play everything myself.
Right.
But get some people, so we called up different friends. Obviously, Jeff was on board right away.
Okay.
And then we called David Gilmour, and then we said, what is Ringo Starr doing? And we got hold of him, and he said, sure, I'll go and do the video. So it was an amazing stroke of luck to get these three people, such famous people to go and just do pantomiming, it's sort of lip syncing, except it's just on instruments.
Yeah, sure.
And,
I mean,
they had very great fun with it.
A fun time had by all.
Definitely.
Level 42. You familiar with that band?
I met those guys. I was in London. I'm on Top of the Pops.
Okay.
I was there a couple of times. I was there once with the theme, and then also when Crockett's theme became a big hit. And I remember that they were there too, and I remember talking to them, but I'm not that familiar.
Okay. They were influenced by you. The song "Something About You" that they wrote was inspired by "Too Much to Lose."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
If you go back and listen to the melody, some of the melody line. Yeah, Level 42. "Something About You." That was from their World Machine album.
No, I gotta listen to it. I didn't know that.
I think you'll be surprised.
Oh, okay.
Okay. What did you think of the new age music wave in the 80s? It's like Windham Hill, Narada Records.
It's wonderful. It's great. I'm sometimes thrown into new age, obviously, for lack of a better, categorization. And I like it, but it's not like my cup of tea as far as that I wouldn't really listen to it. The closest to some, I guess, new agey thing that I came was, with my first album, with first 7 days. And then I did an album with the great guitar player John Abercrombie called Timeless. And it was on ECM, which is basically, downtown new age enterprise.
Pat Metheny is on ECM also, I believe.
Oh yes. No, a lot of great people, but it's ECM is this whole trademark, of like very much in an avant-garde sort of way. So those are the closest things that I would have with New Age.
But I think the New Age wave as itself, I think it fizzled out.
It's not as current as it was then, but it still exists, and some of it is very nice, and it just I like a little bit more energy, and sort of what we call burning music.
A bit more drive.
Yes, please.
Okay, if you could step into a musical time machine, where would you go and why?
Well, there was a time that I met with Jimi Hendrix when we were recording at Electric Lady in his studio.
Okay.
And he came by and he listened to us recording, and this was right before the end, towards the unfortunate end of his life. Mm-hmm. And he was talking that he was very interested in what we were doing, and he would like to get together and do something. And when he comes back, and he never came back from London. And if I have a regret, that's it.
Okay, because there's somebody I asked that same question, and I'm going to play it here in the background. Maybe you can hear it, and I'll let you know who it is. Let's see if I get this here. Well, getting to something completely different, you had mentioned that the influence on jazz and bringing it into this album and whatnot. If you could hop into a musical time machine, where would you land?
You mean as a listener or as a player?
Is there a difference?
Well, yes, because if you're asking me, could I join the Mahavishnu Orchestra, I would say, no, I'm not good enough. But if you're saying to me, would I like to see the Mahavishnu Orchestra at their peak playing live, the answer is yes.
Okay, therein lies the difference.
Therein does lie the difference. So the answer in both cases is, if musical ability was not a question, I think that's a band I would love to have played with, because I've never heard music burn like that in my life. First two Mahavishnu albums. That first lineup of Mahavishnu, the first two albums, that's the most intense music I think I've ever heard in my life.
Although it was not on your pick of the 5 Desert Island discs.
Well, actually, that wouldn't be amongst my favourite albums, but I'm talking about music that would be incredible to be a part of and to be experienced firsthand.
Ah, okay.
So that's a different... If you ask me what's my favourite album, that's a different kettle of fish altogether. True. You ask me, Time Machine, where would I go? I'd go and I'd be in Mahavishnu Orchestra. Talent is obviously talent permitting, which I don't have the talent to be in, but right. that would be extraordinary.
Interesting pick.
Yeah.
So, you heard that?
Right. That's very interesting. That's amazing. That's a great compliment.
Okay, so now I'll let you...
I don't know who it is. The voice sounds familiar, but I couldn't place it.
I'll let you in on who it is. It's Steven Wilson. You know what he's actually done recently in the last 10 years? He's done a lot of 5-to-1 remixing of some very famous albums, Jethro Tull, among others.
Oh, okay.
So I suppose just Google Steven Wilson. And
the band was Porcupine what?
Porcupine Tree, but that's not that's not the only thing he does. I mean, in fact, that band is no longer together. He's mostly doing his solo stuff. So, anyways, I just thought I'd throw that past you.
It blew my mind. It was just a wonderful compliment.
Okay.
If you notice, he did use the word burning.
Yes, definitely. And you know what? I think if you got in touch with him, he'd probably be really blown away. Don McLean wrote American Pie about the day the music died. Now, June 1st, 2008 was the day the music burned. Now, as far as I heard, I think in the Universal Fire, a lot of your master material was destroyed.
Well, unfortunately, all of this has been transferred to high-definition digital anyway, so I'm not crying.
Oh, cool. So you got saved there.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people got lucky. If you're nostalgic about tape, magnetic tape, the original masters. Yeah, it's a pity, but the digital medium has gone light years better since the original CDs and things. So it is preserved.
Yeah, feel bad for the people that didn't have the opportunity to transfer that. You've been honored with Grammys for your work. Where are they placed?
They are actually in my library on the shelf where they belong. Okay.
Every once in a while you dust them off?
Every once in a while, I remember my children used to show them off to their schoolmates. They say, "Hey, look what we got."
Cool.
But I'm not one of I don't like to dwell on accolades and laurels.
Okay, so what?
That's not me.
Is it like a paperweight now, or what?
No, they just sort of stand out. I have two of them, and they are on the shelf. And you walk in there, and you look up the shelf, and you see them. They're kind of shiny, but I don't shine them.
You don't polish them, okay. Sketches and jazz. Did the music on this album, did it kind of like start out as music doodles, kind of like the way Miami Vice did?
Pretty much, except one of the standout things is the Magic Theater piece, which was originally on the Beyond the Mind's Eye in a electronic version, much pop sort of sounding. Mm-hmm. When I worked on it, I was just goofing off, and I said I tried different things. And I, sketched out like a jazz version of it, and I never finished it. And so I came to it, and I said, well, this is something that really should be heard. Again, that's how that came about, mm-hmm. where things can lend themselves to different genres, but you realize it or not.
Yeah. For example, Magic Theater. There's a clarinet and sax. Is that keyboards?
There is an oboe kind of thing.
Okay.
And I don't know, but it's not sax. It's oboe and mute trumpet.
Okay.
And I keep confusing the two versions.
Uh-huh. So was all the music on the album produced on keyboard? Because there's tones in there like xylophone or clarinet and sax and whatnot.
There is the sax. There was Stan Harrison. There was the tenor sax on Mood 2. Mm-hmm. That's the only guest. And everything else is. When you say keyboard, but it's a combination of piano keyboard and computer keyboard, mm-hmm. because it's manipulated. That's the way we work.
Quiet Place I actually liked. It was kind of like bass driven.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very nice sort of smooth kind of sounding. It's all very much like of a chill angle. Mm-hmm. There's not much burning on this record.
No, there isn't. But it's sit back and relax on a nice glass of wine.
That's exactly it. And I thought the whole world needed that.
Yeah. At this point in time, I think so. Yeah. There's something that I heard somewhere or read somewhere that you performed music in a strip club in Boston.
Yeah, that was my first honest-to-goodness paying gig when I first moved to Boston to go to school. And you obviously have to support yourself somehow. So I wandered into this. I don't know how I got that gig. Who mm-hmm. told me just go? And I was there for a few months. And what I don't know. The funny story about that is the friends from school, from Berkeley, the students, started coming to the club to listen to me play.
Forget about the women. Let's go for the music.
Yeah, and it was like I was playing organ with a drummer, and we were doing things like Tony Williams' Lifetime. Mm-hmm. so that sort of music, and the owner wasn't very happy with it, and so that gig ended after a while.
That was the end of that.
But it was funny to see the students coming in to listen to music and ignore the strippers. That is
a funny analogy, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and ask, you ever been approached to compose music for a porno?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
I went to visit Prague about 6 years ago.
Oh, okay, great.
Lovely city.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's very special.
They got a huge stadium there that I don't know if that still gets used.
You mean the Strahov Stadium?
Oh, possibly, yeah.
If you remember the name, or
I think it was. It looked kind of desolate, but anyways.
Yeah, it was really built for sort of big athletic parades, mm-hmm. and during the communist era. And we even, as children, I was like, I think 10 years old, we did synchronized exercises on the huge stadium floor for the potentates, mm-hmm. for the communists. Just sort of, it was a little touch of North Korea.
I can picture that, yeah.
And I was one of the, thousands and thousands of little dots on the field. I was a 10-year-old boy, and it was kind of weird. Uh-huh. But, you had to do it. School said, let's go.
Yeah, be part of the system.
So mm-hmm. that was deep communist hell.
Yep.
It's all gone.
And you've had a long-time relationship with Elliot, I would assume.
Oh, yeah.
It's nice to hear.
Elliot was the road manager and assistant manager for Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Damn.
How far back we go.
If I think about it, the only other people that have had that such a long relationship would be Alice Cooper and who's his manager? Can't think of his name right now.
I don't think I'm familiar with that.
But they've had a long time relationship on a handshake.
Oh, really? Yeah, well, pretty much that's how we are.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Elvis and Colonel Parker.
Yeah, no, very unusual in the music business.
Yeah.
The last thing I guess we'll do here is be something I call word association. So,
okay.
So if I mention something, just let me know what's the first thing that comes to mind.
All right.
Food. Need. Yeah, without it, I guess you wouldn't get far. Technology.
Wonderful.
The 80s.
Remember it well.
Don't we all? And Europe.
My sweet home.
Oh, okay. Well, Jan, thank you very much for this chat. Very interesting. I'm glad you took time to have a chat with me.
All right, it was a pleasure.